Okay guys, try to keep up as best you can. Notice that they aren't too hard. If you find that it's going too fast, please ask the sub to pause. Okay, they will pause, especially during the U-tries, of course, you need to pause the video. Let's jump in. We started graphing yesterday, stretching, shifting, we've been doing that kind of thing. But now we need to actually be able to look at the function and kind of gather some information about the graph without actually having to graph it. So, we start with, if we have a function, f of t, in the form of a sine bt, or if we have a cosine, a cosine bt. Now, a and b are real numbers. So these two, a and b, are just numbers. So for instance, 7 sine 3t. This is in that form because I just plugged in numbers for a and b. So a and b are real numbers. Either function is a sine bt or a cosine bt. I can look at that function right away and I can know its period and its amplitude. The period I will find by doing 2 pi divided by b, whatever number b is. The reason we take 2 pi is because, well, what's the normal period for cosine and sine? It's normally 2 pi. So whatever number this is will give me my new period. So like on this example right here, I would take 2 pi divided by b, which is 3. So instead of a cosine, or sine in that case, taking 2 pi to complete one, it's going to be done by 2 pi over 3. So that means the new period is going to be 2 pi over 3. Let's take 2 pi over b. This is something we still use in calculus a lot. You need to know the period of new functions. Now, amplitude. You know, we haven't really been using that word too much, but that's your stretch or your shrink. Now, I can look at this function right away, and I know we've been graphing a little bit. We haven't graphed a change in period yet, but we have graphed that 7. And what that 7 will do is simply stretch it up 7 and down 7. Okay, so it stretches 7. So to find the amplitude, which is the stretch, I take the absolute value of a. The reason we want the absolute value is the amplitude is never negative. Remember, negative only reflects my graph. So an amplitude is kind of how much stretch does it have. The negative is not going to come into play. So in my example of that 7 sine 3t, my amplitude is just going to be 7. The absolute value of what's in front. But it's never negative. The amplitude is never negative. Let's try a couple. We're going to identify the amplitude and period of f of t equals negative cosine 3t. F of t equals negative cosine 3t. Okay, so my amplitude, please don't abbreviate it a, because we're going to get into stuff where amplitude and a might be two different things. But amplitude is given as the absolute value of a, so in our problem, the absolute value of my a is negative 1, which is just 1. Which makes sense because that's just a reflection. There is no stretch or shrink. It's just normal 1. So now let's look at period. Is given by 2 pi over b. So in our case, 2 pi over our b is 3. There we go. So it completes one whole cycle in 2 pi over 3. Let's try another. We're going to identify the amplitude and period. So identify the amplitude and period. F of t equals 4 sine t over 2. 4 sine t over 2. Okay, so my amplitude is going to be the absolute value, in this case, of 4, which is just 4. There's a stretch of 4. Now, period is 2 pi over b, which in our case is 2 pi over, now be careful, in this case b is 1/2. Okay, don't put 2, it's not 2t, it's 1/2 t. It's another way of writing that. So, and how do we divide fractions? Well, we KFC. So keep the top, I'm going to put it over 1, flip the bottom, and multiply. I get 4 pi. Once again, keep, I put it over 1, flip, 2 over 1, and change to multiplication. So it actually is kind of stretched out. So a normal sine wave will complete it in 2 pi, but this one's going to complete it in 4 pi. Crazy. It's stretched out horizontally. All right, you try. Find the amplitude and period, -5 sine 2t over 3. -5 sine 2t over 3. And could you please pause the video, and then when everyone seems to be done, go ahead and hit play. Okay, amplitude is the absolute value of -5, which is just 5. Period is 2 pi over b, which b in our case is 2/3. So I'm going to keep the first one, flip, change. Now be smart and reduce before you go on. I'm going to reduce those 2's. So I actually multiply across now and get 3 pi over 1, which is just 3 pi. Okay. Now tangent is a little different. Think about it. We can't do 2 pi over b to get tangent because tangent's normal period is not 2 pi. Sine and cosine is not tangent. So we're dealing with tangent. So if f of t is a tangent bt, the period is pi over b, because the normal period of tangent is pi, so no longer 2 pi over b, it's pi over b. And there's no amplitude. Remember, tangent goes on forever and ever and ever. It never stops. So you cannot have a stretch, of a vertical kind of stretch, if it never stops. So with tangent, there's always no amplitude. Now, I will warn you, on every quiz, I trick a lot of people with this. I ask you, what's the amplitude of tangent? And everyone gives me a number. Don't be fooled, okay? Tangent has no amplitude. You just write none. Okay. Ready? Let's try one. Identify the amplitude and period of 1/3 tangent t over 3. Identify the amplitude and period of 1/3 tangent t over 3. Okay, so amplitude. A lot of people want to tell me 1/3. Nope, there is none. It's a tangent. Never stops. Period. Well, that's pi over b. Now be careful, my b is 1/3. KFC, I have pi, flip, oop, there were 1, change. So I end up getting 3 pi. Keep, flip, change. But once again, it's pi over b if you're dealing with tangent. Okay, you try. So I want the amplitude and period of -8 tangent 2t. -8 tangent 2t. Go ahead and pause the video. When you're ready and everyone's done, hit play. Okay, amplitude, don't be fooled. There is none. Don't give me 8. It's none. Okay, period is pi over b, and b is 2. That's it. That's it. Okay. And we'll be graphing these tomorrow to know a little more what the period change really does to the graph. But right now we need to focus on can we find it. Okay, so now my question is, we've done, I give you cosine, sine, tangent, you can tell me amplitude and period. If I told you amplitude and period, could you find me the function? In other words, could you go backwards? Let's do it. I want to write an equation of a sine function. So write an equation of a sine function with amplitude of 3, period of pi. Amplitude of 3, period of pi. Well, right away if the amplitude is 3, that tells me A had to have been 3, or it could have been negative 3. Right? Because we took the absolute value and got 3. Either one's correct. We tend to stick with the most simpler term first and kind of ignore the negative unless it tells me there was a reflection. Now, period. This is not B. B and the period are two different things. Now, how I found the period, I did 2 pi and I divided by B. We don't know what that is. And I got pi. So when I did this calculation, I ended up with pi. So I set this up. Now I need to cross multiply. So I get pi b equals 2 pi. Cancel those pi's. B is 2. So if A is 3, B is 2, and they tell me it's sine, my f of t, and please have f of t, it is a function, is 3 sine 2t. Don't forget your variable. It's very important. Don't just put 2. It's not a constant. Now, this would have been correct as well. But they didn't tell us there was a reflection, so we just don't assume anything. But they would both be correct. But don't forget your f of t. Don't forget your actual variable t. Let's try another. I want to write an equation. Write an equation of a cosine function. So I want a cosine function with amplitude of 4, period pi over 3. Amplitude of 4, period pi over 3. Okay, if the amplitude was 4, A would have been 4 or negative 4. We're just going to stick with 4 though. Now, to find the period of a cosine function, we do 2 pi divided by b. I don't know what b is. This is not b. I see that a lot. This is not b. This is saying what I get when I do this calculation. So I take 2 pi and I divide by b. I end up getting pi over 3. Now I'm going to cross multiply. Pi b equals 6 pi. Cancel those pi's. B is 6. So if A is 4, B is 6, and it's a cosine, I have f of t equals 4 cosine 6t. I just plugged in my A and B. Okay. Let's do a U-try. I want to write an equation of a sine function with amplitude of 2, period of 2 pi over 3. So I want an equation of a sine function with amplitude of 2, period 2 pi over 3. Let's go ahead and pause the video, and then once everyone is done, hit play. Okay, so if amplitude is 2, that means A had to have been 2 or negative 2. We're going to stick with 2. The period, this is not B, but I know I found B by doing 2 pi over B, gives me the period. And hey, cross multiply. Look at there. B had to have been 3. Those are going to be equal, but you could cross multiply. But B had to have been 3. So I have f of t equals 2 sine 3t. Whoops. 2 sine 3t. And if you have any questions, I'll be here early tomorrow morning if you need to, about 7 a.m. Hopefully good practice tonight in homework. Check your answers in the back, but I'll be here tomorrow morning if you do have questions. Okay? Homework is day 3. Shouldn't take you too long, but guys, I want to emphasize to you, I'll be right back here to this. When you're finding B, I want to see the work. If you just put this and this on your page, that's not enough. I want to see how you found B. Okay? So I want 4.4 day 3. 4.4 day 3. Says homework tonight. Okay, so at this time, you're to work on homework. If you finish your homework, which I doubt it, I'll be honest. If you finish it, check your answers in the back, make corrections, then you may work on something for the class, but this should be you should be working on this right now and nothing else. Okay? See you tomorrow.